The thing about Risley is that this school was a powerhouse. It was an academic powerhouse. It was an athletic powerhouse. It was a musical powerhouse. It was an instructional powerhouse. We learned more than we would have ever learned anywhere in the world with the raggedest books, with the less equipment, whatever. Because those teachers were dedicated and they meant for you to learn.
After the U.S. Civil War, African Americans in the South quickly developed institutions that would help them to advance socially, politically, and economically. Schools and educational opportunities were a key component in that advancement. However, like other aspects of Southern life, customs and laws designed to enforce a separate but equal society created obstacles for African American teachers, students, and parents. Focusing on the schools along Albany Street in Brunswick, we will explore the African American educational experience in the city from the late 19th century through the 1960s and the community that developed in response to the challenges of segregation. Historically, enslaved black Southerners were legally barred from receiving an education. In Georgia, it had been illegal to teach enslaved people to read since 1829. Among the efforts to reshape the South after 1865 was a focus on educating former enslaved people. Under the guidance of the U.S. government's Freedmen's Bureau, Northern religious organizations and benevolent societies sent educators to teach African Americans. Schools for newly freed people opened in cities, towns, and rural areas across the region. By 1874, 20,000 African American students attended these schools. Nearly one-third of them were adults seeking an education. In Glynn County, with its large black population due to the number of plantations in the area, schools opened near those locations to educate former laborers. Reports from the local Freedmen's Bureau agent in 1868 indicated that there were 2 schools for freedmen in the area. One in the city and one at Altama Plantation. Another school would soon open at Hoffel Plantation as well. Brunswick School was the result of the efforts of Lieutenant Douglas G. Risley. A former Union officer, Risley then served as the Freedmen's Bureau representative in Brunswick. The Freedmen's School, as it was originally known, opened in 1868 after local trustees acquired land in 1867 for the purposes of educating African Americans in the city. That same year, the Freedmen's Bureau headquarters in Atlanta authorized Risley's request to build a 1-story 2-room school in Brunswick. By 1880, over 200 students regularly attended the tiny school, which was named in honor of Lieutenant Risley after his death in 1882. Education in the early 20th century was vastly different than it is today. Though public schools became common in the South by the early 1900s, few students, either black or white, attended beyond the elementary level. Instead, most young people engaged in agricultural or industrial labor as teenagers. Even as late as the 1930s, a minority of Southern students were enrolled in high school as the need for employment among youth outweighed the need for an education. In Brunswick, education opportunities for African Americans ended after 9th grade. Students wanting to take classes beyond that could attend the private St. Athanasius School, run by an African American Episcopal church in the city. Rather than traditional high school courses, African Americans, and white students of modest means, were encouraged to take classes in industrial trades. Learning work-related skills, officials contended, would be more beneficial to both the black community and the South. Racial attitudes of the period argued that African Americans were generally unsuited for a liberal arts education. Instead, officials argued, black students should receive training in the manual trades they would be expected to hold in society, such as sewing, carpentry, and bricklaying. In Brunswick, the Selden Normal and Industrial Institute opened in 1903 to offer manual training instruction and teacher preparation for the black community. Though Selden closed in 1933 and merged with a similar training school in Cordele, Georgia, the local colored memorial school continued to offer a manual training program for African American students in the years that followed. The original Risley School was a one-room wooden structure which held classes through the 7th grade. From the beginning, the school was overcrowded as African American families sought educational opportunities for their children. To accommodate demand, local black carpenters from the First African Baptist Church expanded the original Risley building to a four-room structure in the late 1800s. Former student Richard Perry remembers attending Risley Grammar School in the early 1900s.
Citizens, not the county, built a four-room massive structure facing 8th Street with a big hall in the center and a double-door entrance with two what they call anterooms or vestibules, one on the right and one on the left. Those small rooms served for your upper grades for a long time. The grades in that section were in the 20s, with a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. 9th grade had few people in it, and therefore they stayed in the two small rooms, one on the west side and one on the east side.
Even with the additions, cramped conditions inside Risley made holding classes a challenge. The tiny schoolhouse educated so many students daily that the teachers were forced to offer 2 sessions per day to meet the need. Educators held one session of classes in the morning and another in the afternoon. Students often sat 3 to a desk in class, and every inch of the building was used as educational space, including the small hallways at the school's entrances. By 1921, Brunswick Education Board officials began building a new school to replace the aging Risley School and to accommodate the growing number of African American children in the county. Described as a modern brick structure, the new 2-story school featured an auditorium, 10 classrooms, and all the equipment and facilities needed for an additional manual training school where students could learn trade skills. The board planned to erect the new structure near the existing Risley School. The older wooden building would remain and continue serving as an elementary school for African American youth, despite its poor condition. The new facility would be called the Colored Memorial School, in recognition of African American soldiers who had served during World War I. The structure was complete and open by fall 1923. Time had caught up with the old wooden Risley building by the end of the 1920s. The school was in poor shape after decades of use. The local black community pressured county officials to build a new school. At first, local leaders resisted the demands of what one report referred to as a very small minority of colored people clamoring for a new building. If they will consider that they are now receiving more from the expenditure of tax money than they pay in taxes, the report continued, they will realize just how liberal our school board has been with them and stop further agitating in the press. By the mid-1930s, however, the continued deterioration of Risley and rising student population forced the government to construct a new school. The new building would sit next to the Colored Memorial School on the land where the old wooden Risley School stood. Construction began in December 1935. The new Risley High School was ready by the fall of 1936. The 2-story brick building featured 10 classrooms, offices, a cafeteria, and a library. With the additional space, the older Colored Memorial School building was converted into an elementary school. In 1953, county officials again deliberated on building a new school for the area's African American population. Though the current Risley High School was not in danger of overcrowding, the local segregated elementary schools were, which could pose a challenge later. A new, larger high school would accommodate those future students while also allowing the current Risley School to serve as an elementary school. Officials selected a site on the 2900 block of Albany Street for the new brick building. They would name it the New Risley High and Junior High School. The new Risley School, which the Brunswick News described as modern in every particular, opened in the fall of 1955. 10 years later, the junior high portion of the name was dropped when officials opened a new middle school in the community. After that, Risley served as the high school for African American students in Glynn County. In 1938, African American residents asked the county commission for their help in building a gymnasium on the Risley school grounds. At that time, Risley did not have a building for sports, dances, or other gatherings. Partial funding for the project would come from both the county and the local community. The federal government would provide the remaining funds through a New Deal program of the Depression-era 1930s, the National Youth Administration. The NYA provided work training and educational opportunities for young people across the United States. Approximately 60 young black youths from the area took part in building the gym. To save costs, the designers decided to use wood from the old Risley School building, which had been moved to make space for the new Risley High School to construct the new gym. Former student James Eppings recalls what happened to the original Risley building.
I was in 4th grade, and they tore the building down. I got to school that morning, and they was tearing it down. And part of it, they pushed across the street on some property that had been acquired at the corner of H and Martin Luther King.
Cochran Avenue then?
Cochran Avenue.
Risley students chose to name the gym in honor of Carrie I. McIntyre, a teacher who had worked in the community for many years and had recently passed away. Eppings recalls how Risley students helped to honor McIntyre and contribute to the gym's construction.
During the year after Mrs. McIntyre died, she had taught 38 years in the public school system. Each student was asked to give 38 cents for each year she had taught. And that's how the money came about for the start of that construction.
The Carrie I. McIntyre Memorial Gymnasium, which cost $13,000 to build, opened in October 1941. It became a place for basketball games, proms, dances, and graduation ceremonies for Risley students in the years that followed. During World War II, thousands of people moved to Brunswick to find jobs in the city's defense industries. Among these new residents were children who needed to attend school. The local school system quickly became overcrowded with the increasing number of students. With financial support from the federal government, Brunswick officials built new schools during the war. By 1944, officials built a new school on the Risley grounds to help make room for the large number of new black students in the city. The I Street Elementary School was a flat-roofed, one-story brick building. The new facility included several classrooms, an auditorium, and a cafeteria. Later, the school was converted into extra classroom space for Risley High and renamed the Jackson Building. For nearly 100 years, schools in Glynn County were segregated. White and African American students went to their own specific schools. The policy of separate but equal defined the lives of Americans for much of the 20th century. By law, both white and black students were meant to have the same educational experience while attending separate schools. In practice, however, the equal aspects were usually absent. For instance, African American students rarely received new supplies or materials for their schools. Classrooms were full of used furniture, passed down from local white schools when they received new materials. Risley students recalled their new desks often had Glynn Academy markings, along with students' names carved into the desks and old chewed gum stuck underneath. African American students also typically received used textbooks. Students remember trucks pulling up to their schools to deliver older books that the white schools no longer wanted. Often, there were not enough of the new textbooks for each student, requiring them to share their books with a partner during the school year. Risley Band director Robert Griffin remembers one time he received new instruments for his class.
So in 1965, we built a new school called Brunswick. So I asked my principal if he could work it out with the superintendent to let me start a program over there, a band program, and he did. So we started talking about it, and I said, I got to have some equipment to start with. So my principal said that Mr. Jonas, who was my supervisor at that time and the band director at Glynn Academy, Rod Jonas. So Rod Jonas went around to all of the little white schools and gathered up all the stuff that they can't use. Bought me a bass drum that's been out of style for about 10 years, about the size of two of these tables there. Bought me a couple of trombones that looked like a truck had run over the bell. Trumpet that the valves were stuck, dents in there. He bought about 12 instruments over to the Brunswick, the new school, unloaded them in the cafeteria, which is where I would have to have my band program. So Dr. Murphy, who was a black principal at that time, called me at Ridley and said, Mr. Griffin, I got some good news for you. I said, what is it? She said, Mr. Jonas has bought some instruments over here for you to come over here and check them out. So, boy, I was happy. I jumped in my car and ran over to Brunswick and went in there and looked at that stuff. Now, you're talking about getting angry.
Though schools were segregated, students took similar classes regardless of their race. African American students took courses in history, English, algebra, and foreign languages like Spanish and Latin. In chemistry and biology, students used lab equipment to carry out their experiments, while music classes taught them how to read and play music. Richard Perry describes the courses he took as a student in the 1920s.
You had a thorough education when you got to the 7th and 9th grade because you were taught the basics. And even in completing the high school curriculum at Grizzly back in 29, by the time that you finished, you had 2 years of algebra. You had plain and solid geometry and introduction to trait. You had 4 sciences: general science, biology, chemistry, and physics. You had 3 years of Latin because you took first and second year Latin and along with history and geography.
Perry and former student Marie Broadsdale also remember taking a class not offered at the white schools during segregation.
In the 9th grade, we had a course in Negro history, the book written by Carter G. Woodson, and it was taught by the late Dr. C.B. Troop.
And I remember vividly when we reached junior high. We used to have what we call junior high school, and in the junior high school, I remember so vividly the Negro history. It was not just a book; it was a part of our studies. It was included in our studies, and we had to study that book just like we studied geography, just like we studied math, English, science. All of these were part of our curriculum.
Students also had the opportunity to learn skills and trades through industrial arts classes. Colored Memorial and Risley High offered courses in home economics and shop, along with other skills-based classes. It was common for Risley students to walk to school. Though Albany Street contained a number of African American neighborhoods nearby, some students had to walk a great distance. Those from the Dixville neighborhood, for instance, had to walk 1.5 miles to school. Those students who lived outside of the city relied on public transportation to make it to school on time. Calvin Way remembered he and others would meet and then ride in the back of a city bus to the downtown station on Gloucester Street. From there, they would walk the remaining distance to school. Some students also caught rides with family or friends who had cars. Others even stayed with family in town in order to attend school. Former Risley student and band member Leo Moore recalls sometimes walking home from school at night after football games.
So we would get home late at night, and we would get in the middle of Albany Street and just walk down the street. Mm-hmm. And as we get to each other's house, we just peel off, even though some went all the way down to Dixville late at night. But yet still the very next morning, we all would be back to school on time. Mm-hmm. Even those who walked from Dixville past Glen Academy down to Risley High School, we would still be on time.
Segregation limited African Americans from gaining equality politically, economically, and socially. In response, They formed their own distinct communities in towns and cities across the United States. Leadership came from black religious organizations, black-owned businesses, and black schools and colleges. Educators had a larger role in the community than merely teaching subjects in the classroom. Former teacher C.A. Lee explains her view on that larger role and the importance of teachers in African American communities during the era of segregation.
Teachers like Ruth Lovelace and Sarah Millette and Alice Collins and you just name them. Because there was a mindset, this is our school, these are our kids. They're going to learn above and beyond what that book says, and they're going to learn what that book doesn't say. We are a community, and everybody is going to get the benefits of whatever we have to teach you. Anybody.
The first teachers to instruct local African American students during Reconstruction were missionaries funded by the Northern American Missionaries Association. The AMA opened hundreds of schools in the South after the Civil War, including schools locally at Hoffel and Altama plantations and in Brunswick. As more African American Southerners graduated from colleges and normal schools by the beginning of the 20th century, they also began teaching in Brunswick. At Colored Memorial School and the various Risley schools, teachers held degrees from colleges such as Morris Brown College, Atlanta College, Fort Valley State College, and other historically black colleges in the South. Often, they also had advanced degrees from those schools or from northern colleges. One educator that students can quickly recall is J.S. Wilkerson, principal of Risley High School. Professor Wilkerson, as he was known to Risley students, received his bachelor's degree from Morris Brown College and a master's in education from Atlanta University. Wilkerson reportedly arrived in Brunswick as part of a college quartet group that was touring through the area. He apparently enjoyed his time here so much, he remained and was eventually appointed as the principal of Risley High School. Students vividly remember Wilkerson's presence.
The principal was Mr. Wilkerson at that time. We used to call him Foots because he had about a 13th shoe.
All right.
And when he walked down the hallway, you didn't hear a pin drop because he was heavy stepping, and you really paid attention to him when he spoke because he had a voice that all he had to do was just open his mouth and you shut up.
What do you refer to him as Professor Wilkerson?
Professor Wilkerson.
Nickname Puss. He was a big fella,
tall, big fella, big feet.
No nonsense.
And when he walked down the hall, you knew his presence.
That's right.
And he wasn't cruel or unkind. He just spoke. And sometimes he didn't have to say a word.
That's right.
You knew where you belong in place, and you better be ready to account for your whereabouts, especially if you didn't have a what? Pass. A hall pass.
The influence of Risley teachers and their impact on their students did not end at the schoolhouse door. Former Risley attendees have vivid memories of their instructors in their neighborhoods as well. Teachers were active in the community, regularly checking in on their students at home and talking with their parents. It was not uncommon for students to come home to find their teacher, or even their principal, on the front porch talking with their mother or father. Members of the Risley Alumni Association explain.
And during my generation, teachers were a part of the culture. We saw them in church. We saw them in the grocery store.
Absolutely.
They came to our parents' house if you weren't doing what you were supposed to do in school.
It was a must that the teachers had to visit each student's home before the year was out.
Oh, really? You had to?
So we really knew our teachers.
When the Risley Junior and Senior High School's Parent-Teacher Association formed in 1955, it was the latest in a line that began with Colored Memorial School decades earlier. Through the years, the PTA provided an opportunity for teachers and parents to work together to help students succeed. By the 1960s, Risley Junior-Senior High School's PTA boasted an active organization with over 300 members, while 100 parents were part of Risley Elementary School's chapter. PTAs provided funding for school functions such as band and chorus performances. They supported scholarship programs and helped raise funds for causes like the March of Dimes. In the 1960s, the PTA worked with teachers to identify students who were regularly unable to afford lunch and launched a program to serve meals to over 100 children each day. Their work helped significantly increase school attendance. Outside of traditional school activities, the Risley Junior-Senior High PTA also played a role in politics. During the 1960s, PTA members educated their neighbors on important political issues and organized carpools to transport voters to polls on Election Day. Sporting events offered opportunities to build community and demonstrate pride beyond the classroom. Athletic programs started with Colored Memorial School in the 1920s and continued at both Risley High Schools through 1970. Throughout the decades, these teams performed well on the gridiron, track, and the court, winning multiple state championships in different sports. This success included the impressive feat of earning championships in football, basketball, and track, all during the 1950 to 1951 season. The Risley football program was a powerhouse, especially in the 1950s. In 1948, L.J. Stan Lomax took over head coaching duties and for the next 15 years, guided the Risley Tigers to multiple winning seasons and state championships in 1950 and 1957. Lomax's coaching success extended beyond the football team to other sports at Risley. He also coached the boys' basketball team and track team during his time at the school. Lomax served as Risley's coach until 1962, leaving the school to become the head football coach at Fort Valley State University. Basketball was a popular sport at Colored Memorial and Risley High School. Colored Memorial first held games outdoors, forcing players to contend with the elements as they played. After the construction of McIntyre Gym, basketball finally came indoors. Soon, the gym became a popular location for basketball tournaments between African American schools in the region. When new Risley High School opened in 1955, players finally had a modern indoor basketball facility. Risley basketball teams earned state titles in 1951, 1955, and 1969. The basketball team under coach Clyde Williams turned the new gym into an exciting experience for fans. Before each home game, the team would unroll a long red carpet for players to walk down as they made their way onto the court, energizing the crowd. Players also used a golden basketball during warm-ups. Risley basketball games became so popular that fans packed the gym's small bleacher section. Coaches sometimes had to open the gym doors so that more fans could view the game from the doorway. Risley fielded teams in a number of other sports over the years. In addition to basketball, female students could also join the track and field team. Male students had a track team as well. The track squads enjoyed a great deal of success, winning 5 straight state titles from 1950 to 1954 under Coach Lomax. Baseball came to Risley in 1968. Though the school was set to close just 2 years later, the Tigers played a number of schools during their 2 seasons. This included 4 games against the new Brunswick High School in 1969 and 1970. The first Risley band formed in 1928 but faded away soon after, perhaps due to the Great Depression. By 1952, a new band formed in time for the fall football season. That summer, the school launched a fundraiser to buy instruments for students. In October, the Risley High School band marched on Lanier Field during the halftime show of the Tigers football game against Quitman. Though they had raised enough money for their instruments, the band members were unable to buy uniforms for the season. By the early 1960s, new band director Robert Griffin had transformed the Risley Tiger Band. Borrowing a performance style from his alma mater Tennessee State University, Griffin emphasized musicianship mixed with a lively performance and modern music to entertain the crowd. The new style was incredibly popular with the community, and the band attracted large crowds whenever they played. Griffin explains his style as Risley's band director.
We did some hell of a halftime shows.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. And you speak to anybody in this community now about Risley band, they'll go off on you. No, we do the national anthem in the beginning, and we played music all during the game like they do even now. But we just always had a good halftime show when one school would play the same thing, same tunes for a whole football season. We have a new show every week. And here's my job was tough for Doc because I had to orchestrate the majority of my music. Let me show you the difference, and this is really a culture difference. Now, Glenn Academy can go out there on the halftime and play America the Beautiful, Sally Go Round the Loop. But when I got out there on that field, they got to hear the latest pop tunes.
Griffin also recalls a memorable halftime performance when his band backed popular singer Joe Tex.
I tell you something that happened, and I got kids right now. I see they are grown. Some of them are retired from used to be Hercules. We talk about it. One day we had 1 week, Joe Tex, which is a national artist, similar to James Brown. I played with him in Nashville. Joe Tex was booked at Selden Park that weekend, and we knew each other. And I found out through Janot Martin, who was over the park, that he was in town. I went and met him and got him to sing 2 songs during the halftime. I orchestrated them, and we blew him off the field. That thing, these kids and the whole community, they never forgot that. I got kids right now, they're grown men and women, talk about that show. I mean, we backed him.
Parades were important events in the lives of Risley students and the Brunswick African American community as a whole. These were opportunities to celebrate as a group in public. Homemade floats topped with students crawled down Albany Street towards Gloucester Street and back. The parades drew crowds eager to take part in the festivities. The events often attracted African Americans from other communities to travel to Brunswick so they could hear the band and watch the precision and flair of the drum majors and majorettes as they marched through downtown. Band director Robert Griffin and Risley alumni remember their parades on Albany Street.
And man, we come down Albany Street, the trees start trembling.
You got big crowds for games, big crowds
parades.
Oh, yeah.
We had better parades than Glenn Academy ever thought to have. Every corner would be crowded. And when they got there to Gloucester Street and Albany, turning back to come this way, that was something. You could see that band showing out.
And during my generation, there was a young lady named Betty Simmons.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, if she could strut.
Yes.
She could twirl that baton. Broadway and in Hollywood, she was good. I mean, people just followed her just to see her.
That's right.
I mean, we stepped. We stepped.
We didn't have a parade.
It wasn't just marching along. We stepped.
You had a little soul in it.
We had. I mean, he had left by the time I got, because I was, like that particular ending up with head majorette position. Then, of course, but we had a drum major before me.
Right.
If you're familiar with exactly what somebody told me about this man.
Oh, we call him Pretty Boy.
We call him Pretty Boy. His name was Leon Day. I mean, he was the stepper of the town.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he was.
Yes, we had Mantan.
Leon beat Mantan any day.
Robert Tresvant. I mean, there were over the years, a number. But yeah, we all
in all the surrounding schools. See, you'd have Waycross. You had Savannah. Both the Savannah teams bands coming. You had Camden County, Todd Grant. You invited all.
They all come in, you guys.
Oh yeah, for the parade.
Yeah,
they don't have a parade now. And see, only thing they have back then, they used to have the fire truck coming down the road, and squad cars. The cheerleaders would be on the fire truck. Now what is that? But now they would talk about our parades.
Risley High and Junior High opened in 1955, 1 year after the Supreme Court ruled segregated education to be unconstitutional with its Brown versus Board of Education decision. Yet, despite the court's ruling, Brunswick schools did not fully desegregate for another 16 years. Desegregating public schools after 1954 was a slow process in the South. Southern politicians and local communities pledged a program of massive resistance through protests and legal actions to prevent integration. However, by the mid-1960s, local school officials in Brunswick found themselves at a crossroads. As the federal government increasingly pressured Southern communities to comply with the law, the local school board had two options. The government could force them to accept an integration plan, or they could handle the process locally themselves. School board officials chose the second option, announcing a voluntary desegregation program in summer 1963. Their plan was to select 6 African American students to be the first black students to attend Glenn Academy. The backlash within Brunswick's white community was almost immediate. After learning of the plan in late August, parents of Glenn Academy students convinced a U.S. District Court judge to order a halt to the enrollment of the African American students. For the next 2 weeks, both sides argued their positions in court as Brunswick residents followed along. Finally, on September 12th, an appeals court directed the county school board to proceed with limited integration at Glenn Academy. The very next day, 6 African American students, 3 boys and 3 girls, entered the white high school without incident to begin their school year. In 1968, the Glenn County School Board announced their plan for full integration of local schools. This freedom of choice plan would allow parents to decide which schools they wanted their children to attend. Believing that the white schools would provide greater opportunities, a number of African American parents chose to send their children to Glenn Academy and the new Brunswick High School. At the same time, no white students opted to attend Risley or the other African American schools in the community. By early 1970, again under pressure from federal courts to fully integrate their school system, the county school board submitted their plan for the formation of a unitary school system in April of that year. Full integration would start at the beginning of the 1970 school year. Under the new plan, Risley would no longer serve high school students. Instead, Risley students would be divided into 2 groups. Half would attend Glenn Academy and the other would attend Brunswick High School. No white students would come to Risley. As one member of the Risley Alumni Association remarked, the school board sent no one from Glenn Academy to Risley. But still, she added, the board saw it as integration. As African American students began their new schools in the fall of 1971, many of them were dismayed that they could no longer attend Risley High. While school integration was an important milestone for African Americans in their struggle for equality, the loss of the community that their schools had fostered was an unintended consequence. On the one hand, they now had legal access to areas of life that had traditionally been denied to them. At the same time, however, this progress contributed to the loss of unique black spaces, which had been so important to African Americans living in a segregated society for a century. Some former Risley students lamented the fact that they were forced to attend a new school. They remember feeling uncomfortable and unwelcome upon arrival, making their adjustment even more difficult.
It was an adjustment. It was a major adjustment. I mean, because, we were forced to go someplace we didn't want to go. And once we got there, the treatment that continued from early integration was not much different. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want us there. We didn't want to be there. We actually only had a year. And so we just toughed it out.
It was hell.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, it was hell.
Yeah.
Originally, I was pretty good. I was a scholar. I was played on the baseball team. I was kind of popular a little bit. When I went to Glenn Academy, nobody knew me, except for the ones who followed with me. And it was just hell.
And they didn't want you over there.
And it just was. I was out of place, and it was just terrible. I just couldn't find my footing.
Students were also upset that they had lost their opportunity to graduate from Risley High School, a distinction that carried so much pride and respect within the black community.
All your life you dream about attending Risley, graduating from Risley, and that was just a way of life that we knew and appreciated on all the extracurricular activities, all of the social life, everything about Risley was just appealing to everybody, and folk wanted to be a part of. But and so when they told us at the beginning of the school year in, I guess, 1969, because the last class graduated in 1970, that they were closing the doors for Risley and we were going to Brunswick High or Glen Academy, it was a sad day.
After 1970, the schools along Albany Street continued serving as educational facilities for the county. The new Risley High School became a middle school in 1975. Colored Memorial became a kindergarten, and the original Risley High School building remained an elementary school in the years that followed. More recently, the County School Board has used these locations for alternative schools and special educational programs. Today, Colored Memorial School and the original Risley High School buildings are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. As first-hand experiences with legal segregation fade away, it is important to remember the challenges and the triumphs that took place within the community that formed as a result of unequal treatment. Though the institutions meant to educate African Americans in segregated Brunswick no longer serve that original purpose, the memory of those places remains. Former students and staff who remember the events that took place both in and out of the classroom, and of the people who taught and learned within the walls of those buildings, keep that experience and that community that began so long ago in 1868 alive.